Hello ladies, welcome to Homemaking Radio. I hope you get a few things done while you listen today. I'm Mrs. Sherman and I'm broadcasting from the manse this morning. This is the only place I've had for a while that's cleared off enough to show you, so the rest of the house is falling apart. If I tried to get it all cleaned up and get ready to broadcast, you would never hear from me. And I want to remind you that if you hear something that you don't quite agree with, it's just my experience and my opinion. Everybody's different, and you need to check it out, test it out, and make sure that it works for you. And don't take anything I say too seriously, but investigate it. And also, if you're new here or if you're old, please subscribe on the YouTube channel and ring the bell, because then it will show up as when it's current and you can see the next episode. And also it will show you when my blog has been updated, because I'll include the link there, and that's where the video is also embedded, and you can leave comments there. I don't have the time to monitor too much online, so I just didn't have comments on the videos on YouTube, but you can comment about anything and you can see the rest of the post. Now, yesterday, or whenever I previously broadcast, I talked a little bit about being home and being ordinary, or living your daily life. It isn't really ordinary. It's quite extraordinary. And I got to thinking about people in the Bible that we think are so what a hero they were. You know, what wonderful things they did. The Apostle Paul and others, but someone was talking to me about Christ and how he didn't ever travel more than 30 miles from his own home, and how his ministry was actually very ordinary in the fact that he just talked to people. He did some miracles, and he also, of course, by the power of God, was able to do much more than we can do. But we have to be content at home. And I also talked about the problem of wanting to go somewhere else for ministry when, if you children are at home and you're thinking about what you'd like to do or go see, try to do things that include your family, your whole family, and especially your parents, because they need to be ministered to. They have ministered to you. They have shown you how to look after yourself, and they have probably had great talks with you, spent a lot of time with you, and you need to remember that and not think that you invented yourself, that you created yourself, and that you have all these choices to make. Really, our choices are quite limited in some ways when we think of who we are and who we owe our life to. And I also mentioned how many times we are told in hymns and the missionary journeys of Paul that we should go. But really, there's a ministry in staying. And you look at Mary and Martha, where Christ said, Mary has chosen the good part. And well, what was she doing? She was just sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to him in her own home. And she was serving. They were both serving them. Mary and Martha were both serving Christ in their own home. And hospitality is something that you can show to your own family, to your own parents, and to your own children. Make life more interesting at home. I have a granddaughter who's just excited about life all the time, and she gets Tea Time magazine, and when she does, she puts on her father lets her buy all the ingredients to make everything on a menu in that magazine. And she sends me pictures of long table full of these little bites of things for their tea, and the drinks and the things they're going to have, and all the china. And it's an adventure for her. She's doing it without going to chef school, and she's making life great. She's the only girl in the family. She has brothers, and you can see them in the pictures standing on the sidelines waiting for her to say it's time to eat, and how excited they are because they get something special. And so you can use the resources you have on hand and make life better at home. That is a great ministry. I have on my description of these videos, it's homemaking support. But I talked to you last time about being prepared not to have the support, to be so convicted and so driven by your beliefs about the home and about what can be done, about its potential, that if the support was dropped, if your friends quit talking to you, if people quit complimenting you about it, if it didn't seem to make any difference to other people, how you could still be enthusiastic about it. And you have resources. I talked to you about Tea Time magazine, but whatever country you're in, there are resources that are available. You don't have to there's a tendency in homemaking, because we're doing so many things by ourselves and there's no one taking care of us, and we're trying not to use prepared food, and we're trying to do everything from the original fresh product and stuff. But there is a tendency to get so primitive that we don't accept things that could make our life at home have more potential and make us smile. And we have here in our country the Victoria magazine. Some of your subscriptions may be subsiding, but please resubscribe, because if you resubscribe, it's $29 here in the U.S. and it ends up being $5 an issue, or $2.50 a month, because the issues come every 2 months. But if you buy it off the newsstand, they're very expensive. I'm trying to think what they are on the newsstand. But it's well worth it, because it's the Homemaker's Helper, and there's never a discouraged word in it. And a lot of women don't like to buy, any kind of publication, because it makes them feel bad, because everything's so pretty in there and they can't afford the house or the furniture. But this magazine has somehow managed not to make anybody feel bad or feel envious or feel a lack, because now I'll just show you something. This time there's a big picture of all the pumpkins that are around this year. We're having autumn, as you can tell by my setup here. And so I got to looking at that, and I hope that my granddaughter will look at it too, because this is where she's going to get some ideas. Maybe she could do something like this. And this is just on a porch. And so I did. I went to the local grocery store, and they had different colored pumpkins, and I just chose some for the manse that I thought would look nice, and I'll include pictures here so that you can see what I did, because I was looking at all these pumpkins. Now, the only thing that would make you feel bad is if you didn't think you could afford them, but you could have one, and they're so beautiful. When I was growing up, the only pumpkin we ever saw was the big orange one, and I have noticed over the last 20 years how many more varieties they are, and they have names on them. I kept the stickers on all my pumpkins and squashes and gourds, because they all now have names on them, and I love the names. And then I will save them and maybe collect the seeds if the mice don't get them first. And so and also that shows things that everybody has: an old plate, an old vase, mismatched chairs on the at the table, and just little scenes that you might not have noticed before, but you have them around you, maybe right outside your own window. And there was one here that I thought, oh my goodness, I have been down that road so many times and just didn't notice what a beautiful photograph it actually made. But looking at them is very good. Looking at the pictures and looking at the actual scenery is very good for your mind. And this is an old house. You know how I like old Victorian houses. It's very hard to find paintings and pictures of the Victorian houses. And this is a tea time that she had turned it into a tea room, apparently. I haven't actually read the article yet, but maybe she's made a bed and breakfast out of it. And there's a road that I have been down many times in the autumn, and someone's taken a picture of it, and I thought, we just need to get out of the car or go for a walk. I was talking about how God gives us so many very healthy pleasures. And one of them is just simple and healthy. And if you were my kids and I was giving you a week of reprieve or something to help you heal your mind or settle your body, I would have this on your schedule, and that would be go outside and stand on your front porch or on the front step. Just go out there in the morning, no matter what the weather, and just go stand out there. Put that on your list and write it down. I have a whole list of things that God has given us that we can do that don't cost us anything, and that are very good for your health and for your soul and for your mental well-being. And so that would be one that you would do in the morning after you are dressed and ready for the day. And there is a temptation to think that no one's going to care if you're on your own or you're doing this by yourself, even with a big family around. They might not notice that you have this little schedule of very wholesome pleasures that God has given you. They might not notice you do this, but no matter who's around, you can get up and go and stand on your front door outside and just kind of look at the way that the day is developing. Look at the colors. Every day it is different. Isn't this interesting that God gives the earth a new wardrobe? Almost daily, really. You think there are 4 seasons, but every day something changes in the look of things. And that's the one thing I like about the Victoria magazine, is that it just brings that out, and there's never a discouraging word. And I remember getting the older ones in the 1980s when it first began, and it would just have little tiny pictures of a vignette on a table, an old teacup, a doily of grandmother's, a letter, or something like that. And it just made us look again at what could be done in the home and with our lives, and the focus that we could have that would be just living our daily lives. Now, I mentioned hospitality. That is something I wanted to talk about because the last time the descendants came, I didn't have a program. Usually they have a program for me and I have a program for them. And if I stay 3 days, they'll say Monday morning, noon, and night. And then they have the menus and everything. They have it all planned. And we try to stick to it. And then last time my daughter gave me a little mini journal. You know, they make these journals out of all this wonderful scrap paper and little bits of things, and with little pockets in them, and you can collect things from nature, leaves and things like that, and you can write down what you did or the feelings, or it's just a memory. And I wish I had thought to bring it here, but I don't know where it is. Oh, I found it. Excuse me, just a minute. Okay, here it is. And she's got it all tied up in it looks like a shoelace, a green shoelace. Just adorable. This is herbal. It looks herbal. But see what she did? Well, she put these little tags and things in pockets like this. And then here was another tag here. And of course, it was so pretty I didn't write it. But I'm supposed to, do something with all this. And this is more stuff here. And it was just for 3 days, so she just made a few little pages. And look at that. Isn't that pretty? And then this opens up, and there's more. And so I wish that she had done one of these for me for the beach when we were there for 3 days. But you could do something like this yourself. Anyway, that was just a way to keep track of what we were doing and make it special. And I also think that you can observe. Now, if you're nervous about what to do when people come and they're going to come and you feel a little inadequate, what you should do, instead of, you can plan things, but the last time they were all here, I had kind of run out of things that inspired me to do, and I just kind of let it go. And I thought, well, I'll just provide the food in the home. We'll see what happens. And I watched what they did, and they were not looking for any kind of entertainment or anything to do. What they were doing, I just kind of watched to see. They were getting out old books and sitting on the couches and chairs and reading, going through the old books and the old magazines that I had saved. And I save all the ones like this because they're my books and they're my future books. And if I should not have a subscription to this, which I don't think I do for some reason, I would go back and when the season came around, get out all the previous years and just stack them there and use them again. And people used to say they felt sorry for me because I was getting out old subscriptions, but you pay for them, and some of them are nice paper, and some of them are beautiful. And the other thing that I noticed is they were going to the coffee and tea stations and fixing themselves hot chocolate, and I made a hot chocolate mix myself out of pure cocoa powder, the stuff that doesn't have anything in it, and it's real bitter, and I had mixed it up with dry milk and various other things, and then I had provided just the hot water. And they were also, and they were going several times to their coffee and tea station. They were also going outside and walking around, or laying down on the grass, or just looking around. And also in the evenings, they would just sit around and listen to Papa tell stories. And I would go do something else because, of course, if you've been married 50 years, you've heard all those stories already. So I would just go use the opportunity to go clean up something or get ready for something else. And they didn't particularly didn't look like they were anxious to do anything. They were just enjoying sitting around, and which is probably not what you get to do so much at home, especially the parents. So I just let it go. And sometimes all people want to do is just sit around. That's okay. And as part of their pursuit of happiness. But if I had you here, and you were my kids, and I was going to teach you or coach you on how to live your daily life, that would be one thing we would do, is go outside and observe, just walk around. You don't have to even think for a few minutes. Everything would only be a minute or two. And emphasize how to live and how to do that. When you've been raised to go somewhere else, to an institution, a public school, or a commercial place of work, you don't really get that. You don't really get to do that. And you think of how many of us were raised without thinking, and how that leads to problems later on. And so I think that, but I think we can all be redeemed. We can all just start over again and do all this, do all the things we missed out on. And I would say, okay, you've been outside, now it's time to, we'll have a cup of tea. Lately, I have been noticing the real fancy teas in the little slender canisters and what is in them. They have a lot of dried things, dried fruit and dried herbs, different things that we could do at home. And so I have been buying chopped dried fruit of different kinds, mango, coconut, and cranberries and different things like that, to just try it out myself to see what it would be like. Put them through a strainer and hot water, and just that's what I would do. I would have you make your own formula and your own cup of tea, and then after that I would encourage you to maybe make up a song and but also it would be an activity every day. I think that as a homemaker, you need to choose something every day that's an activity that restores your mind, that is not work. Now, some people thrive on work. I know a couple of ladies who just, they go over to their mother's house sometime, and they clean her house, and they're singing, and they remind me of the Cinderella story. They're just, sweeping and singing and straightening things out. They love the rattle of the dishes that they wash, and they love to make her house look shiny and clean, and they enjoy it. I don't know how they learned to do that, but they just really enjoyed that. And they may have had a little, playhouse stuff, like a little broom when they were little, or something made them very enthusiastic. And that's their creative outlet, is they like to go and clean their mother's house. And so some people don't have to be free from work. It can be heavier labor when you're disturbed about it or when you're upset about it. It's better to do it cheerfully because it makes the work light. And so use the resources that you have around you. And then after that, it might be time now to go and you fix up some lunch of some kind, and you don't have to actually cook anything, but you can show someone how to make a sandwich, or how to make arrange something on a plate so that it looks beautiful. And as sometimes businesses fold up, or they're not there and there's no place to go, and you're used to going out for lunch or going into town and walking around the shops, you start to realize that that's all empty, and the home can replace it all. Anything you want to do out there, it's nice and it's stimulating, but you can do a lot more at home to fill in the things that you used to do out there, and that gives you a little more time. And that's one of the things that we run short on sometimes, is time. And it's very important to appreciate the home, and it's harder to appreciate it if you haven't put a lot of effort into making it a nice place for you. It's one thing that I would encourage you to do, is make it a place that you like to be. You're going to be looking at it. You're going to be maybe confined in it sometimes. You need to make it a nice place. So one of the advantages of being home is that it gives you a chance to create skills and use them. You can't do that if you're working for someone else. You cannot really use your talents. They will tell you in these job training things that this is a place where you can really bloom and you can really use your talents, but they still limit your talents. You really don't get to be free, but like you can at home, if you are doing it in a way that's optimistic and cheerful. It's very important also to get rid of criticism, especially criticism of yourself. You can feel so bad you don't feel worthy, and also people can make you feel guilty because they think you're not, quote, not working. But homemaking is so challenging and so hard that you have to have these natural pleasures that God gave us that are wholesome, like going for a walk, like having a cup of tea, like treating yourself to something that will make you feel relaxed and cared for and healthy. And last time I talked to you, I was reading from Helen Andelin's book, and she had the best. When I was really young, I read this book and took the course, Fascinating Girl, back in 1970, I believe it was. And they were quite popular at the time. And she had something in here, a subject called refinement, which I had never really heard of. My father and other people of that era would joke about it, and they would say that they were going to send us all to refinement school. Well, we had no clue what that was. But she described it in two pages of this book. She describes it better than I have ever seen it in any of the etiquette classes, in any other type of book or course that I have read. She described it so well, maybe even by one paragraph. And I was reading about it to you yesterday, and it basically is being careful not to offend anybody. And I was noticing as I was reading it, and she was saying, don't start talking about hot subjects, and don't scorn or use vulgar language, or tell off-color stories. And I mentioned many, many episodes ago about how ladies get together sometimes and they start talking about their surgery, and they start talking about the pain, and they start talking about where the needle went in and where it came out and how much blood was spilled. And it destroys your appetite at a tea, or just in the presence of other people, how to keep it pleasant. And this book was talking about refinement, and I'll always remember a lady that said she would come back to visit one of these groups, and I believe it was a ladies group. She says, as long as it's not another organ recital. Talking about their organs, their liver, their heart, their kidneys, and everything else. And that's not to be unsympathetic, but in a group, it's not a good idea And I noticed in all the descriptions of refinement that she had on these 2 pages how much it had to do with the tongue, how much it had to do with the words we say. And so, remember, David said, put a seal on my lips. And so put a seal on your lips and be very careful what you say. Even when you're complimenting people, sometimes it can go awry. And so she mentions never ignore social invitations. They should be promptly accepted or declined with graciousness by phone or letter. So you've got to be careful about bluntness, because she talks also about tact. Now that would be a subject that would be worth covering in your homeschool, is tact. Look it up and find examples of it. And you can even go to the Bible and find tact because it's courtesy. And often it has been said that the book of Philemon, where Paul was imploring someone to be kind to someone else, and how careful he was with his words, how diplomatic he was. It's diplomacy is what it is. And so you can find it in many places in the Bible. And so refinement has a lot to do with the tongue. It also has to do with the activities and with the way you sit. For example, you don't go into someone's house and sit on the edge of their chair, like on the arm of the chair, what they call the arm of the chair. And you don't move their furniture around. That has happened to me several times, where I told someone to make themselves at home, and they thought it meant, well, I want to move this chair over here because I'm more comfortable over here. And they would move the chair. And of course, at the manse, I pack things behind chairs in boxes if I don't have a closet that it fits in. And so they'll move the chair, and there'll be this unsightly stack of stuff that they left bare, and usually in a corner. And I love chairs in corners because you can put stuff behind them, and so that sort of thing. But it's useless to tell people who are used to being real casual. It's useless to tell them, you can't move my furniture, because they think, well, why not? They really don't get it. And it could be that this is what they do at home. So they don't see anything wrong with doing it in public. And a lot of that comes from, you go to restaurants and you've got a big group with you, or a big family, or 2 families that want to sit together, and they will just move the tables and the chairs to fit you all. So when you go to somebody's house, carry on some of these same habits. It's the same with food. When you go to a restaurant, especially the fast food restaurants, you drive up and you get to pick exactly what you want from a variety of things. And but when you go to somebody's house, they might only have one or 2 things, and you don't get the biggest choice, and sometimes that makes fussy guests. But the whole idea of refinement, I believe, from what she said here, is keep your mouth shut about anything that you don't like. And I remember when we were growing up on the homestead in the summer, occasionally a fly or something would come in the house and land on our plate or something, and we'd say, there's a fly here. And my father, of course, we'd get rid of the fly, but he'd say, you better be quiet or everybody will want one. I don't know, strange sense of humor these people had. So I want to read a little bit more about refinement, because she did such a good job, but mainly it impacted me that most of the trouble with refinement is you can't offend people, and the most of the time when we offend, it's with our tongue, it's with our words, and the Bible talks about that. She says, also learn to respect another person's enthusiasm. Now, if you want to hear me read the first part of the chapter on refinement, it's only 2 pages in this book. You've got to go to the previous video. Also learn to respect another person's enthusiasm. Now, we used to call this pouring cold water on someone's idea or enthusiasm, and that's something that needs to be learned at a very, very young age. And I remember walking home from school with a couple of girls who had done a really good job reciting a poem or some historical event or something in class, and there were three of us, and one of them said, well, I don't think you did such a great job. And she said, you don't know how that hurt my feelings, and how that just takes the enthusiasm out of me. And of course, the girl didn't know. They just didn't. They were just being honest. Children will be honest, and they don't know. So we have to teach them a better way so that they don't discourage anyone. So let me start here again. Also, learn to respect another person's enthusiasm. For example, if a gentleman tells you of an adventurous journey he is about to take, and he unfolds his plan and gets into a state of excitement, don't throw cold water on his enthusiasm by acting bored. And talked about the scoffer in the Bible. Talks about scoffers, and the first thing that you can detect when someone's scoffing is they roll their eyes, or they look away, they act bored, and that's something that we need to be careful about. Even worse, don't make a negative remark which would just destroy his enthusiasm together. Someone's enthusiastic about growing a garden, and they'll reveal maybe too much. That's another thing too, is you could avoid this. Avoid the people that throw cold water on you or destroy your enthusiasm by also keeping your mouth shut and not revealing too much. Just say, yes, I do have a garden. That's all you have to say. You don't have to say, and I use hydrogen peroxide and paper towels to encourage earthworms and stuff, because here comes this smart aleck gardener who's going to correct that and say, well, he heard that didn't work, or I would be careful about that, And so just don't give too much information, and you'll also help these other people who are critics. You will help these people who throw cold water on enthusiasm or interest. You will help them behave themselves. And that's a ministry. That's a great ministry. By not giving them enough material to work with their criticism. So don't throw cold water on his enthusiasm by acting bored. Even worse, don't make a negative remark which would destroy his enthusiasm altogether, such as reminding him how expensive it might be. Instead, share his enthusiasm, because that's one of his interests. And there'll be people that will tell you things that they're doing that might not be anything that you care about or that you're interested in, and you can think of all kinds of reasons not to do it. But if it's one of their interests, then you just acknowledge it as one of their interests. That's all you have to do. You don't have to tell them why they shouldn't be doing it if it's something that's pretty wholesome. Or if he's merely enthusiastic about a piece of cake he is eating, don't dampen his enthusiasm by a negative remark, such as, I can't stand that kind. Does that remind you of Emma's father, Mr. Woodhouse, who was warning the people in the house at this celebration about too much cake? And but I think that Brian Kozlowski's book explained that, that they didn't eat as much sugar as we do, and he was really just warning them against the harm it would do. However, special occasions, piece of cake, we don't need to come down on people and explain to them how bad it is for them if it's just a special occasion. Still another lack of refinement is cheekiness, an old-fashioned word which means to be very nervy or impose on people. Cheekiness is an attitude of expecting favors. I just have to watch myself about that, because sometimes we're so familiar, even with family, that we think that they're going to do something for us or make life easy for us, with a lack of consideration for the imposition it might be on another person. Young people are guilty of this practice by asking for things to eat while in the homes of their friends. We've all experienced that, haven't we? Or by asking to borrow clothing, cars, or even money. There are emergencies when asking favors is justified, but borrowing is ordinarily considered nervy and unrefined. That's interesting. Whenever somebody wants to borrow something, I'll just show them where they can get it themselves, because I know if they borrow, it won't come back in the same condition, and it might not come back at all. And one of the rules we have in our house is we either give the book away, concerning books. We don't lend books. We tell them where they can get a book, because we might not ever see the book again. They don't remember to give it back, but if they really are interested in it and we don't want it, we can give it to them. But we don't allow borrowing. We give people what they need, and we don't allow them to borrow it. So this is an interesting chapter, and it's all about how to be more courteous. And I think that was very valuable, and it was only 2 pages, and yet I think there's so much in there that you could provide subjects for a long study, and even write something about it, where she talks about what is crude, coarse, or vulgar, impolite, inconsiderate, rude, unrefined, propriety, good taste, and graciousness. Those are words. You could write a whole book on that to help people, and you could role play in classes with each other, especially with your older children. You could role play, put on little plays about somebody being courteous or discourteous, and the right and wrong way to talk to someone, maybe who is being rude. And that's an interesting thing. And I had suggested in a previous video, when you get somebody maybe who's holding you up at the door and you're trying to leave and they're talking, you could role play something like that, and let's see how we could better get away from this person without offending them and without being rude, because a lot of times they just don't know. Another thing that I think that's worth talking about is how education is such a big word now. The Bible doesn't even use the word education, I don't think. But we went years ago, back in the 80s, to hear a man called Sam Blumenfeld speak somewhere to some homeschoolers, and he had written a book called the NEA, National Education Association, Trojan Horse in American Education. And he said something that I'll never forget. I wouldn't remember all of his speech, but he said, the people that run the education system think that by educating people, they'll get better and better. But we know that only the Bible and adopting the principles of courtesy and love and refinement and hospitality, only by that can a man refine their character. And so he talked about how people get stuck in the education system, and he talked about how they hope to reach something higher and better all the time, and they never quite achieve it. But I suppose that's the same for many different things. But how much more satisfying it is to know the Word of God, and to know how to. He talked about reading and writing and how important that was, and how if you could read, you could read the Word of God, and how this national education system had changed the way reading was taught, so that most of the kids kind of just barely learned how to read, or just some of them just fell between the cracks and didn't quite catch on. Whereas when it was taught phonetically, like 2 letters have a sound, 2 or 3 letters have a sound, and by sound, that there wasn't a reading failure in some of the private schools. But I just thought it was interesting that he said that these people thought that by education people would get better and better, and that they would not need God. And so I wanted to be sure and mention that to you. And before I leave today, I want to make sure that every day you do something that's a very innocent thing, whether it's taking a basket of lunch outside, or taking your little notebook out there, or starting a little art journal and recording things in it, or writing a letter, some little thing that you do every day. And I would have a list for you to do if you were my kids. And so, ladies, I hope that this has been somewhat valuable to you. I haven't been here very long today, and I don't think I have anything else to show you. Yes, I do. Somebody asked, was it the widow that wrote a comment, and I haven't heard from her, but she was asking how you would store teacups. But I have a very narrow china cabinet, and so there are only 2 rows of cups can be in it. So what I have learned to do is that you can stack these. The saucer fits on top of the bowl of the cup, and you can stack these by 2. Sometimes I can stack 3, but it depends on where the handle is. That doesn't set very well because the handle is higher, but it depends on where the handle is and whether the bottom of the saucer fits. And so I can do that in my china cabinet. And I try to keep the heavier cup on the bottom and the lighter cup, the one that's more lightweight, on the top. Behind me, you'll see those little books by, is it Terry Willits? And there are 101 quick tips to make your home feel sensational. 101 quick tips to make your home taste sensational. 101 quick tips to make your home sound sensational. And 101 quick tips to make your home look sensational. And they are these little books. You can get these on thrift books or Amazon or something like that. They're just so pretty and easy to read. Would be great for girls, young girls, and have beautiful, beautiful drawings and illustrations in them that I've always loved. It reminds me of Emily Barnes' books. So I wanted you to know about that. And my teacup today is something that I got at Goodwill years ago, but I think that it is probably not. It's Grace's Teaware, yeah. It's hard to believe I got that at Goodwill, but it's Grace's Teaware. And my daughter has been lead testing a lot of the teacups and discovered that the new ones some of the newer ones don't have any hints of lead in them because they're not using the same kind of trim. So ladies, I hope this has been valuable to you. I'm sorry it wasn't quite an hour, but I hope you get something done, and it will go on the playlist and immediately begin the previous video so that you can get something done. Next time, I hope to do something about sewing. So I'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming, and I love your comments. I'll talk to you later. Bye.